Hello, and welcome to the channel. In our last video, we discussed the case of John List, a man who ended the lives of his mother, wife, and 3 children. In this video, we'll be looking at another tragic case, one which thankfully didn't take 18 years to solve, but one which left an everlasting imprint all across America. On the 25th of October 1994, a phone call would be made to police, where a man would tell the operator that a woman had knocked on his door, frantically crying. She told him that she had been the victim of a carjacking and that the individual responsible had taken her 2 children. So what happened? Let's begin. Today's story takes us to Union in South Carolina. It's a small county with a population of around 8,500 people, according to a 2010 census, although it's estimated that figure as of 2019 has reduced to just under 8,000 people. The people of Union are focused on religion and family. Being a small town, it isn't hard to bump into someone you know. Susan Smith was one of the residents of Union County. Born Sarah Lee Vaughan to parents Linda Harrison and Ray Vaughan on the 26th of September 1971, her home life was somewhat difficult. Susan was said to adore her father, and it was said that her face would light up whenever he entered the room. However, her parents' marriage was a rocky one, and in late 1977, the pair divorced. On the 15th of January 1978, just 5 weeks after the divorce was finalised, a heartbroken Harry Vaughan committed suicide when Susan was just 6 years old. Linda had already remarried just 2 weeks after the divorce to a member of the local chapter of the Christian Coalition, Beverly Russell. Bev owned an appliance store in downtown Union and was also a South Carolina State Executive Committeeman for the Republican Party. Her father's death left a lasting impression on Susan, and she herself would attempt to take her own life at the age of 13. Despite her troubles, Susan performed well in school, and in 1989 she graduated high school, being voted friendliest female by her peers, as well as classmates saying that she was cheerful and down to earth. In 1988, while still at school, Susan began working at Winn-Dixie supermarket. Here she started as a cashier, but was promoted to head cashier within 6 months. Later, she would become bookkeeper for the supermarket. While she was here, she began an affair with a married colleague. The man in question was considerably older than Susan. While dating in secret, Susan fell pregnant, but decided to have an abortion. While Susan was seeing this older married man, she was also dating another colleague at the same time. Upon learning of this other relationship, the married man ended things with Susan. This breakup sent Susan spiraling, and she would attempt suicide again in November 1988. She was admitted to hospital for a week. After her release, it took a month for her to recover from her failed attempt at her own life. Her employers were supportive, and once she was able to, she was back at Winn-Dixie. Another man who worked at Winn-Dixie at the time was David Smith. In the summer of 1990, the pair began dating, despite David being engaged to another woman at the time. Although their relationship was considered casual, in January 1991, Susan found out that she was pregnant again. She informed David of the news, and they both agreed that she should continue her pregnancy. David came clean to his fiancée about Susan, and the pair broke up. David and Susan agreed to marry, and they wed in February 1991. It was said Susan's mother and stepfather disapproved of David due to him not having a college education and for not being from the same economic background as their daughter. On the 10th of October 1991, the pair would welcome their firstborn child to the world, a son, Michael Daniel Smith. The pressures of being a young couple rushed into marriage, and now parents, began to show. Not only did David not get on well with his in-laws, in particular Linda, but the couple also continued to work together, with David being Susan's boss. Additionally, there were multiple affairs that both were each responsible for, and the relationship was on and off throughout 1992. However, Susan fell pregnant again with David's child in November 92, and after much discussion, the pair decided to give things another go the following month. By the time their second son Alexander was born on the 5th of August 1993, the pair had already separated, and Susan had now left Winn-Dixie, as she could no longer work underneath David, who was now in a relationship with another co-worker there. Instead, Susan joined Conso Products as a bookkeeper and would work her way up to assistant to the executive secretary for J. Kerry Findlay, the company's president and CEO. Susan enjoyed her work at Conso. She took pride in her responsibilities there and was happy with being exposed to a kind of lifestyle that she wasn't used to seeing, thanks to her close connections to J. Kerry Findlay. There was also another reason why Susan enjoyed working at Conso: the CEO's son, Tom Findlay. Being the son of a rich CEO, Tom was a popular bachelor in Union. Susan was attracted to Tom, and by January 1994, the pair began dating. Over the next few months, the pair would regularly meet for lunch and go to the movies together, as well as Susan visiting Tom's cottage on his father's estate and attending lavish parties organised by Tom. However, by the summer of 1994, their relationship had ended. Susan and David would rekindle their relationship and attempt to salvage their marriage one more time. Although by July 1994, the pair split, and this time, Susan filed for divorce. Despite the breakup, the pair were on amicable terms. Susan still harboured feelings for Tom and wanted to get back together with him, believing that she would find love and stability with him. They would start seeing each other again in September 1994, but this would be short-lived, as Tom, who liked Susan very much, but didn't want children, nor did he want to bear the responsibility for someone else's children, wrote a letter to Susan, breaking things off. Susan attempted to convince Tom to continue the relationship on the 23rd of October 1994, after meeting him at his cottage, but she was unsuccessful. Susan was clearly someone who needed companionship. When she was alone, she was described to experience severe anxiety and depression. She would take time off work, and people noticed that she had begun drinking more heavily. Although on the 25th of October 1994, the lives of everyone connected to Susan would change forever. The 25th of October 1994 began like pretty much every other morning for Susan. She woke up, got dressed, fed and clothed Michael and Alex, and took them to daycare, before heading to work at Conso. She had lunch with several of her colleagues, with Tom being present among them. She was quiet throughout. At 1:30 p.m, she asked her supervisor if she could leave early for the day. When she was asked why, Susan told the supervisor that it was because she was in love with someone who doesn't love her back. She was asked who this person was, to which Susan explained it was Tom Findlay, but it could never be because of her children. Susan eventually decided to remain at her desk for the day. An hour later, Susan called Tom, wanting to meet him outside Conso to talk, as she wanted to share concerns that David was going to expose and make public information about her, such as cheating the IRS, and even claiming that she had been intimate with Tom's own father, J. Kerry Findlay. While Tom assured Susan that he would provide support to her as a friend, despite the claims Susan made, he told her that their sexual relationship was over. Refusing to accept this, Susan attempted to meet with Tom again at 4:30 p.m. at Conso Photography Studio. She tried to return a sweatshirt that belonged to Tom, but he instead told Susan to keep it. Upset at this latest rejection, Susan collected her children from daycare, and while driving, she spotted Conso's marketing manager Sue Brown, who was also driving. The pair drove to a bar called Hickory Nuts, parked up, and Susan explained to Sue that she wanted her to come back to Conso with her to apologise to Tom, admitting to her that she lied to him about sleeping with his father, and she wanted to see how he would react. Sue agreed, and they went back to Conso. Sue minded the children while Susan went inside to clear things up with Tom. However, he was having none of it, and swiftly had her leave his office. Dejected by this, Susan told Sue that she, quote, may just end it. By 6 p.m, Susan dropped Sue back off at Hickory Nuts and then went home with the kids. Later that evening, Susan would call Hickory Nuts and speak to Sue again, asking if Tom was there. Sue said that he was, and when Susan asked if Tom had mentioned her by name, Sue said he hadn't. 8 p.m. now, and Susan decided to go for another drive. She dressed her children, placed them in their car seats, and left to cruise around Union. The following I'm going to describe next is Susan's account of what happened.
Yes, ma'am. There's a lady who come up that door, and some guy jumped into a red light with her car with her 2 kids in it, and he took off, and she got out of the car here at our house.
And he's got the kids?
Yes, ma'am, in her car. And she's real hysterical, and I just decided I need to call law and get them down here. Can't even get to figure out which way he's going.
What kind of car is it? We need to know something.
We're trying to ask her now. A Mazda Protege. What color was it? A burgundy Mazda Protege.
Get them going, Pam. I got 2 kids.
Okay.
That's a black guy, she said.
Okay.
Black male?
Yes, ma'am.
You know which way?
Do you know which way he went?
Daddy, ask her if she know which way he went towards.
Did he have a gun? Ask him, did he have a gun?
Okay. Wait till he comes back.
He's trying to get her out of her now.
Did he have any weapons, gun, anything?
Did he have a... Look, going towards Chester. Did he have a gun or a weapon in there? Say he had a gun? Yeah. He's got a gun.
Got a gun.
Yes, ma'am. Hello?
Okay. We're getting them on the way.
Okay.
Give me your name.
Rick McLeod's my name. Do you need us to tell you anything from our yard or anything?
Okay, can you get a tag number out of her?
Daddy, see if you can get a tag.
At approximately 9 p.m, Shirley MacLeod was relaxing at home reading the Union Daily Times newspaper when she heard banging and screaming from her front porch. When she opened the door, standing there was a hysterical Susan Smith. Susan was sobbing uncontrollably, begging Shirley to please help her. She had been carjacked by a black man, and the children had been taken. Shirley's husband, Rick MacLeod, then phoned police and explained the situation that Susan was in. Eventually, Shirley was able to calm Susan down enough for her to expand on what happened. Susan said that as she was driving through Union County, she stopped at red lights at Monarch Hill. Here, a black man approached her car at gunpoint, where he opened the door, jumped in, and told Susan to drive. Otherwise he'd kill her. Under the instruction of her carjacker, she drove approximately 4 miles northeast of Union until he forced Susan to stop past the sign directing to John D. Long Lake, a few hundred yards from Shirley and Rick's home. Here, he told Susan to get out the car. Susan explained that there wasn't a single car on the road at the time where they were. She begged the carjacker for her to take her children, but he pressed his gun against her ribs, telling her that he doesn't have time for her to collect Michael or Alex. However, he assured her that no harm would come to her boys before driving away with her car and her sons. Susan then attempted to call her mother, to no success, but she was able to get in touch with both her stepfather Bev and the boy's father David. By the time she spoke to David, police were already at the McLeod's home and were well underway with the search for Susan's red Mazda. Sheriff Howard Wells, who was overseeing the search, sat with Susan and went through the events that took place with her. Realizing that the situation was more than they could handle alone, Sheriff Wells contacted the head of South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, also known as SLED, for additional support. The FBI were also brought in to help with the investigation. News of the carjacking and child abduction swept through the small town of Union and would spread out to Americans nationwide. Susan Smith was experiencing an outpouring of love and support from those she knew, as well as millions more whom she didn't. Although, as you likely gathered from the title of this video, the narrative Susan gave was utter bull, and it wouldn't take long for authorities to pick up on Susan's deception. After gathering at the McLeods, Susan, David, and her parents agreed to go back to the Russells' home. Susan mentioned to David that Tom Findlay may show up there, preparing him for his potential arrival so as not to anger him. David, however, thought that this was an odd thing to say, as it should have been obvious that his priority was locating his children, not worrying about his ex-wife's latest squeeze. On the 26th of October, Sheriff Wells worked with SLED to arrange for specialist divers to search John D. Long Lake. SLED helicopters, equipped with heat sensor technology, was also used around the lake and the surrounding area. Nothing was found during the search. Needing to obtain more information about the black man who carjacked Susan, he made arrangements for a police sketch artist to visit Susan to draw up a composite sketch of the man responsible. Susan described him as being around 40 years old, wearing a dark cap, a dark shirt, jeans, and a plaid jacket. That same day, David's parents flew into Union from California to be with their son during this difficult time, as well as his uncle Doug and his wife, who drove from Michigan to support the distressed couple. By now, the Russell home was swarmed with family, friends and locals, all of whom expressed their sympathies and offered help wherever they could. If Susan Smith was feeling alone before, she certainly wasn't now. She even received a call from a concerned Tom Findlay, who wanted to offer his support. During this call, Susan turned the attention away from her missing children and onto the topic of their relationship. Tom apparently told Susan not to worry about that, and instead concentrate on finding her children. Later that day, Susan would be interviewed by Sheriff Wells, while David spoke with SLED investigator Eddie Harris, where the idea was proposed that he and Susan make a live televised appeal for the safe return of Michael and Alex. Although initially nervous, David agreed. By now, the national media had arrived in the small town of Union. David, along with Susan, appeared in front of the press and made an emotional appeal to the carjacker.
Pray most of all for them, and that they are being taken care of, and that they are safe, and that they will return home safely.
I want to say to my baby that your mama loves you so much, and your daddy and his whole family love you so much. And you guys have got to be strong. because you are. I just know, I just feel in my heart that you're okay. But you got to take care of each other.
After this, Susan continued to be questioned by both Sheriff Wells and SLED investigators, where she was made to recount the events of the previous day again and again and again. Two days after the supposed carjacking, David and Susan submitted to polygraph tests, which were carried out by the FBI. Unsurprisingly, David passed with flying colours, demonstrating that he knew nothing of the disappearance of his boys. Although when it came to Susan, her test results would come back inconclusive. Further polygraph tests Susan would submit to would also come back inconclusive. The one striking question which showed the highest level of deception was the question asking Susan if she knew the whereabouts of her children. While polygraph tests aren't considered admissible in a court of law, and I personally have my own doubts as to the veracity of these devices, it wasn't just the polygraph tests which gave police concerns over Susan. Behavioural specialist Agent Caldwell, who had interviewed Susan Smith on at least 3 separate occasions, noted several inconsistencies with her story. During her questioning, she mentioned visiting a Walmart shortly before the carjacking took place, but police interviewed those working there that night, and none of them recalled seeing Susan in the store that night. While this might not seem out of the ordinary for those living in a densely populated area, remember, Union had less than 8,000 people in the entire town. There was also the case of the police sketch she had provided. The sketch drawn up looked incredibly generic. The features described by Susan could be applied to many of Union's black residents. The media would eventually pull the image from reports due to its generic attributes. Additionally, Susan also told police that on the evening in question, she had planned to meet a friend. However, this friend told authorities that they hadn't been home that night and weren't expecting Susan. There was also an issue with where Susan was carjacked. She told investigators that she had stopped at a red light and that no other cars had passed by. Although in order for her to have stopped by a red light, there would have needed to be traffic travelling past on the crossing intersections, as the lights only turn red when a vehicle trips sensors, prompting the lights to change colour. Then there was the matter of her love interest, Tom Findlay. Police learned that Tom had broken off the relationship because she had children. Authorities asked Susan outright whether this had anything to do with her children going missing, to which she informed them that no man would make me hurt my children. They were my life. Were. Past tense. Police believe Susan knew her children were no longer alive. Police did receive a lead in the search for Susan's car when a vehicle matching hers was tracked down in North Carolina. However, this was a dead end, as the car was proven not to be Susan's. Over the next few days, Sheriff Wells would give press conferences to the media, updating them on the progress of the investigation, refusing to rule out any suspects, which included both David and Susan Smith. While the Union Daily Times would publish an article detailing the discrepancies with Susan's story on the 29th of October 1994. Authorities by now were convinced that Susan Smith was involved with her children's disappearance and would continue their interrogations on a daily basis, hoping to break her down. David, however, would continue to believe Susan, and she even suggested to him that should they find the children, they should attempt to give their marriage another go. However, by day 9, all would change.
Susan, yesterday I know authorities searched your house inside, outside, underneath. Were you there at the time, and do you know what they were looking for?
No, ma'am, I was not there, and I do not know. I did agree, sign a form for them to do that. I was aware they were going to do that, and I understand that's just one of the normalities they have to do in any investigation.
Sources close to the investigation, Susan, have told NBC News that federal agents are focusing, in fact, on the relationship between you and Mitchell Sinclair, the man that you were going to visit that night, the man you said you were going to visit with your children. They've told NBC that there were inconsistencies in your stories. Do you know what inconsistencies they were referring to?
No, ma'am, I really do not know that, but I would like to say that...
9 days into the disappearance of Michael and Alex, David and Susan Smith participated in 3 network TV interviews. Susan would stress that she had nothing to do with the disappearance of Michael or Alex, with David believing her wholeheartedly. After the interviews were complete, Susan was yet again called into questioning by Sheriff Wells. After again going through the discrepancies of her statement, eventually it became too much for Susan, who asked for Sheriff Wells's gun so she could kill herself. When Wells asked why, she said to him that, quote, "You don't understand. My children are not all right." She would go on to confess to Sheriff Wells about the truth of the 25th of October 1994, where she would go on to write a written statement detailing her thoughts and actions that night.
When I left my home on Tuesday, October 25th, I was very emotionally distraught. I didn't want to live anymore. I felt like things could never get any worse. When I left home, I was going to ride around a little while and then go to my mum's. As I rode and rode and rode, I felt even more anxiety coming upon me about not wanting to live. I felt I couldn't be a good mom anymore and didn't want my children to grow up without a mom. I felt I had to end our lives to protect us from any grief or harm. I'd never felt so lonely and so sad in my entire life. I was in love with someone very much, but he didn't love me and never would. I had a very difficult time accepting that, but I had hurt him very much, and I could see why he could never love me. When I was at John D. Long Lake, I had never felt so scared and unsure as I did then. I wanted to end my life so bad and was in the car ready to go down that ramp into the water. And I did go part way, but I stopped. I went again and stopped. I then got out of the car and stood by the car in nervous wreck. Why was I feeling this way? Why was everything so bad in my life? I had no answer to these questions. I dropped to the lowest point when I allowed my children to go down that ramp into the water without me. I took off running and screaming, oh God, no. What have I done? Why did you let this happen? I wanted to turn around so bad and go back, but I knew it was too late. I was an absolute mental case. I couldn't believe what I had done. I love my children with all my heart. That will never change. I have prayed to them for forgiveness and hope that they will find it in their heart to forgive me. I never meant to hurt them. I'm sorry for what has happened and know that I need some help. I don't think I will ever be able to forgive myself for what I have done. My children, Michael and Alex, are with our Heavenly Father now, and I know that they will never be hurt again. As a mom, that means more than words could ever say. I knew from day one the truth would prevail, but I was so scared I didn't know what to do. It was very tough emotionally to sit and watch my family hurt like they did. It was time to bring a peace of mind to everyone, including myself. My children deserve to have the best, and now they will. I broke down on Thursday, November 3rd and told Sheriff Howard Wells the truth. It wasn't easy, but after the truth was out, I felt like the world was lifted off my shoulders. I know now that it is going to be a tough and long road ahead of me. At this very moment, I don't feel I will be able to handle what's coming, but I've prayed to God that He give me the strength to survive each day and to face those times and situations in my life that will be extremely painful. I have put my total faith in God, and He will take care of me.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of her children, Michael 3 and Alexander 14 months. The vehicle, a 1990 Mazda, driven by Smith, was located late Thursday afternoon in Lake John D. Long near Union. 2 bodies were found in the vehicle's back seat. Identities are pending and all.
Police would go back to John D. Long Lake again, and using the information Susan provided in her letter, they were able to locate the missing car, approximately 100 feet from the shore and 18 feet underwater. Inside the car were the bodies of Michael and Alex Smith, still strapped to their car seats. Police had initially missed the car during the first search, as they assumed the car would have been driven into the lake at high speed, rather than rolled in, leading them to miscalculate the area where they needed to search. In short, the car moved much further into the lake as a result of being rolled in. A closed casket service was held for Michael and Alex on the 6th of November 1994. The brothers were placed together in the same casket and buried next to David's brother Danny Smith. The church was overflowed with people from all over, wishing to pay their respects. A memorial for the boys was also erected at John D. Long Lake. The love and support that Susan received in the early stages of the investigation had in the blink of an eye turned into hatred and outrage, and understandably so. She would be held without bail at York County Jail pending her trial. When Susan Smith's trial began, prosecutors were looking to seek the death penalty. Susan's parents hired the help of David Bruck, who then enlisted the help of Judith Clark, both of whom specialised in death penalty cases. The trial was broken down into 2 parts. The first was to determine guilt. Clearly there wasn't an issue with proving that. The second part would be to determine the punishment that would be handed out to Susan. Susan's trial was taking place at the same time as O.J. Simpson's murder trial. Given the notoriety of both cases, Judge William Howard, overseeing the Susan Smith trial, issued a gag order preventing both the prosecution and defence, as well as the media, from reporting anything not yet presented to the court. Television crews would also be banned from recording in the courtroom. Furthermore, the jury was sequestered to a nearby hotel. Susan's defence team hired a team of psychiatrists who would diagnose her with dependent personality disorder. Controversially, David Bruck decided against moving the location of the trial to a more neutral place, believing that he would have a better chance of convincing Susan's peers, rather than a jury of strangers, that her actions were a result of her difficult upbringing and depression. The trial began on Wednesday the 19th of July 1995 and would last a total of 9 days. During this time, the defence argued that Susan had ended the lives of her children as a result of a botched suicide attempt and blaming it on her mental health. The prosecution, on the other hand, would argue that Susan murdered her children in an attempt to win back Tom Findlay, who had ended their relationship because he didn't want children. Naturally, Susan Smith would be found guilty of the murders of her 2 sons. It appeared that the jury were on the side of the prosecution, but this was just the first step, as Susan's punishment needed to be decided. The jury who had decided Susan's guilt were now asked whether Susan should face death or be spared but with a lengthy prison sentence. The prosecution called David Smith to the stand, who gave an emotional testimony of his relationship with Michael and Alex. They would also play the interview tapes showing Susan lying about the phantom carjacker in an attempt to demonstrate her ability to deceive others. The defence, however, called on their own witnesses who gave character statements supporting their claims that Susan Smith was a troubled woman. One of those witnesses was Beverly Russell, Susan's stepfather. Shockingly, Beverly admitted on the stand that he had been sexually abusing Susan since she was 15 years old. This carried on over several years, with the most recent assault taking place just 3 months before she murdered Michael and Alex. Prosecutors even reconstructed the car sinking at John D. Long Lake, using cameras both outside and inside the car. They were able to show that it took just under 6 minutes for the car to be fully submerged, revealing the true horror that Michael and Alex undoubtedly experienced. This footage was actually shown twice, once in a private setting, where Susan played tic-tac-toe and whispered to her defence, smiling, and again to the rest of the court, where she was seen in tears as the footage was played. Once all testimony, evidence, and closing statements were given, the jury was sent to deliberate Susan Smith's punishment. After 2.5 hours, the jury returned with their decision. On the 27th of July 1995, they had spared Susan Smith's life. Judge Howard sentenced Susan to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. She'll be eligible for parole in 2024. In the years since her incarceration, Susan has remained at Leith Correctional Institution in Greenwood, South Carolina. She has been in trouble 5 times during her time inside, including 2 separate occasions where she had sex with 2 different male prison guards. Both were fired, with one receiving a 3-month prison sentence and the other a suspended prison sentence. Lord only knows why anyone would want to sleep with a child killer. But one of the guards spoke out publicly, calling Susan manipulative. I mean, sure, but being a child killer is a bit of a deal breaker for me. In 2020, it was reported that her behaviour had improved, but I'm sure this has nothing to do with the fact 2024 is looming, and she's wanting to set a good example for the parole board. The defence did their job in convincing the jury that Susan didn't deserve the death penalty. I, however, am not so easily swayed. The prosecution didn't need to prove motive, and this was considered a mistake on their part by trying to prove one. I appreciate that Susan experienced problems growing up. Personally, I'm convinced she did what she did to win Tom Findlay back. In my mind, she's no different than Chris Watts. A special thanks to Proper Horrorshow for narrating the confession letter. I've left a link to her channel in the description below. Subscribe to her channel and check out the live streams we do there on Tuesdays at 8 PM UK time, where we review a different horror film each week. She also produces high quality horror film reviews, so check it out. If you found today's video informative, please like and share the video, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, take care and goodbye for now.